Ihr seht und hört einen Podcast von Future of Festivals, dem Branchentreffen für alle VeranstalterInnen, DienstleisterInnen, EntscheiderInnen und Auszubildende aus dem Festivalbereich. Unsere nächste Veranstaltung findet vom Mittwoch, dem 25. bis Donnerstag, dem 26. November 2026 in der Station Berlin statt. Kommt vorbei, wir freuen uns auf euch. Aber jetzt erstmal viel Spaß mit der Aufnahme.
So nice to be here. Thank you for the warm introduction. We will talk about health on tour. So, yeah, lack of sleep, high pressure, irregular meals, constant travels, rushes of adrenaline, alcohol, and probably other substances, and contact with thousands and thousands of different people. These are only a few parameters of a tour. And yeah, that sounds quite intense. Tour is not only a strain on body and mind for the artist, but for the whole travel party. So we are here to ask ourselves who is actually taking care of the health of artists and their crews, and how can we support this tiring system to be more respectful with the limits of health. My name is Rosalie Ernst. I'm a free music journalist, and I am happy to welcome you all to this talk. And here to answer my tedious questions are three people bringing very different points of views to the table. An applause for Julia Frank, Dr. Jochen Habsch, and Dr. Arun-Castro. Let's give you a closer introduction to these pros sitting here next to me. So first, in the middle, we have Julia Frank. She has over 20 years of booking experience as head of booking at Wizard Promotions. And beforehand, she was working 6 years in tour and festival booking. So she is from the industry side of things. And she was not really an office type of woman, so she worked as a tour manager, was hands-on as a production manager and as a tour accountant. She spent much time traveling on the road, supporting mainly bigger rock bands, and I bet she has seen it all and is not afraid to talk about the ugly side of touring. On the left-hand side, we have Dr. Jochen Habsch. He is Munich's on-call event doctor of choice, so he is stationary and left the tour bus behind. But as an event doctor, Jochen works behind the scenes with and brings medical support to artists and crew to help them entertain us. And he also has experiences in the entertainment industry as well as in medical care for competitive athletes. So he brings also the view of very different industries here to the table. And he also assists event organizers and authorities already during the planning phase of events and big events. So yeah, this is also a very interesting spin that we can touch today. And then finally, coming straight from Britain, we have Arun-Castro. Dr. Arun-Castro, he runs RoadieMedic. It's a clinic for touring artists and production, and he was freelancing in the British festival medical scene, which brought him the awareness of the unmet health needs of touring artists and the crew. But to be part of the change that he wanted to see in this industry, he set up RoadieMedic to offer the touring community, mostly in Britain, a single point of access to solve health issues on tour and give quick solutions to need the appointments with affiliate doctors, to physios, to nurses with industry experiences. So, very different perspectives coming here together. Thank you all for being here. And first of all, I want to point out, this will be probably more of a negative side, but in preparation, in our call, each and every one of you pointed out in a very inspiring way that you chose to work in this industry because live music is spreading happiness and bringing joy to the world. This is why you started working in this field, and I think this is like quite a nice and heartfelt motivation to work there, but you also all face in your own ways the stressful and the harmful side of it all. So let's get a little bit into your day-to-day jobs. First of all, Julia, maybe you can start with telling us what's a normal day on tour like. I know this will be a challenge. And how often do you work actually with medical professionals in this daily business of touring?
Well, a normal day at the office kind of depends on which job I'm doing. I think it makes most sense to talk about production management because it's the most challenging one. And depending on the size of the production, if we're doing an arena tour, it's usually me, the stage manager, and head rigger. We're in the building half an hour before everybody else, except for the caterers. We start setting up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning with a mark out. Then the different teams are rolling in. We're setting up production usually until about lunchtime. Then the supports come in. We do sound checks right about till the doors open. So then my job is handling security, making sure everybody's in position, opening the doors. That's about an hour of break for dinner, or mostly breakfast, lunch, and dinner in one of the challenges. We run a show, and afterwards we load out again. So the most challenging part is long hours, very little sleep. Usually the production managers are the ones that hardly have a break.
Yeah, you're there like from start to finish all the time with some other people of the crew.
Because we're the ones with all the responsibility. So with the different teams, sound crew, lighting crew, they have off times in between, but hardly anyone gets to leave the venue. And then we load out. So easily 18 to 20-hour days at times. So that's challenging. The pressure of getting everything done in time, because if something goes wrong, it will have an effect on everything afterwards.
And where exactly can you fit health and medical care into this full day?
Well, that's completely something
packed?
that happens out of the ordinary. That's not part of the plan, and that's why it's so important that we have doctors on standby, or we're in touch with doctors in pretty much every city that we travel, because it's only very few bands have a touring doctor, so we always need to have someone who can come in quickly. We need a doctor on site always during load in and load out, because that's when the emergencies happen. I know we're talking about artists today, but the majority of cases is actually the crew, and the crew doesn't get to leave the venue.
Oh yeah, we should definitely include the tour, like the crew. Jochen, what is a normal day when you work as an on-call doctor for you like, and how do you feel like does it interact with the description of a tour day of Julia?
Unfortunately, they often call between 10 in the morning and noon because they need me for the same day. So actually, it's unplanned, and that's what Julia said. It's not part of the schedule, unfortunately. It's when they need you, and often it's almost too late when they need you, because then you can only fix the things that already happened. In some productions, it's that they call in advance and that we do the planning and the prevention of health problems together, and that should be the best thing for a tour, so that the impact on the crew and the artist is not so high, or that you can already do something to prevent, with the high impact, to prevent any health issues, mental health issues and physical health issues, just from the start, from planning a tour. But usually I'm called on the same day, and then I go to the venue, and then I'm called for one patient, and usually then it's 5 or 6 patients. Usually I'm called for an artist, but the crew is much more often, not much more, but often at least as important as the artist to support the whole show. And so I'm called for an artist, and then I treat 4 or 5 members of the crew to help them to get through their medical problems.
And when you compare it to your experience with athletes or with sports events or other events that is more in the TV side of things, in this side of entertainment, are there differences?
Yes, there are great difference, because in sport, For example, I was on the complete sports tour with with special athletes, or with the skiing athletes. I did the summer camp with them, and I always was the doctor for them for the whole time, the same doctor for the whole time. So you can treat ongoing conditions, and you know what you did last week, and you know what the condition was last week. And in the entertainment industry, it's completely different, because there was another doctor at the other venue who already treated the patient, or I'm the first doctor to treat the patient, and it's always only on spot, and that's a great difference.
Yeah, I would say touring is an elite sport. So it's, antisocial hours, there's lots of travel, intense pressures, deadlines, and it just never ends. So you just talked about the load-in. You're there at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., you're finishing at 2 a.m. potentially, and then you're going to get in a tour bus and travel overnight 5-6 hours in a bunk, and then do it all again the next day. So it's kind of quite cumulative. So from my perspective, what I see is, the touring rhythm is out of sync with our circadian rhythms. So, we've got a lot of sunlight right now on me, thank you. But usually in the natural world, you're getting that at 7 in the morning, your adrenal glands are going to be producing cortisol, it's going to wake you up, you're going to get active and do things. And then when sunlight goes down, melatonin's secreted from your pineal gland, that is your rest and recovery hormone. But, what are you doing at 8 p.m.? You're probably headliners coming on, and the lights are on, the pyros are going off, the crowd are going crazy, you're problem solving, you're going crazy, possibly. No. But, there's a lot of, adrenaline, a lot of cortisol release there, so that's stress. And then the body has to then work through the late hours, the 1 a.m. finish, 2 a.m. finish, and then get in a tour bus and become exhausted. So it's that touring dynamic is just out of sync of your natural circadian rhythms. So that's the fundamental physiology of why it's hard and why people burn out. From my perspective, artists and athletes, there's a lot of similarities. I would disagree that there's some similarities in that there's that peak performance, there's a finite, it might be a 40-minute set, it might be a half of a football game where you get your chance to shine, make an impression, and the pressure's all on there, and you've trained for many years, whether it's a studio recording, whether it's playing local pub gigs, club venues, building your Instagram profile so people take note of you, all the hard work that goes into building artists, and the same with a sports person. They've spent their whole childhood building up to this moment. So there's a hell of a lot of mental pressure. So I think in a way also the time in which you're on stage or on field is similar. But I think actually touring is just a lot more relentless, because there aren't rest days, because there isn't a physio necessarily to help you with, or until RoadieMedic came along, but there isn't a physio, always there. So I think that's what I'm trying to do with RoadieMedic is for touring, whether you're an artist or part of production, to have a single point of a contact. When you've got a problem, it came out the blue at 10 a.m. When you didn't make the call time, and here's a way of solving it. So whether it's through seeing a doctor, a physio, a nurse, a nutritionist, that's kind of what we're doing. So in the UK, you can book online, or you can get a doctor to come to you at the venue, and there's different sort of tiers for, van tour, theatre, arena, stadium.
So, Julia, when you plan a tour, or when you are on production, or look at a job offer for a tour, are there immediately red flags where you say, okay, there will something happen, this is a criteria, here we need a rest day? Are there criteria, and how much power do you have in your job to change it around?
You were saying it's about knowing your artist, and some artists will need a rest day between shows.
Yeah, it's. I've worked with a lot of older artists, and they have a different touring rhythm. I have bands that tour 6 days out of the week, and then with the older artists, oftentimes it's one show, one off, one show, one off. And so, yeah, that's a totally different cycle, and it's also healthier for us to always have a day off in between that we usually spend sleeping. And one aspect that we haven't touched is we're talking about arena acts and obviously very little sleep. The club bands, that's also an issue because at least for the arena shows or larger shows, there's an insurance, the promoter has an insurance coverage, so does the artist. For the club bands, they usually don't have an insurance, which means they cannot financially afford to skip a show. So they will play no matter what, and that's really dangerous as well.
Definitely, you can see from a schedule, where the overuse injuries come. So it could be a singer losing their voice. It could be a drummer with sort of musculoskeletal shoulder, guitar players with wrist tendonitis from overuse, and lugging their kit. If it's a van tour, it's lugging all the kit as well. So that's the kind of things that definitely we see.
Yeah, Jochen?
Yeah, that's. I want just to say to what Aaron said. That's why I think you need specialists in this field. That's what Julia said too. Because if you have an emergency doctor on site, because for the audience you need an emergency doctor on site. Usually they are not specialized in these fields, and you always have to treat what's very unusual for a regular doctor. You have to treat with people who want to work. Usually, if you have a regular practice, people come and say, I don't want to work tomorrow, I'm ill. And the people in the entertainment industry, they want to work, they have to go on stage, they have to have the money. The crew wants to work, and that's what we have to support, and what you always have to have in mind. You're just supporting them. That's my job, just supporting them that they can do their work and not the difference.
So, are there any tricks that you already have for a tour day where you say, okay, this could easily, if you implement it like regularly into a tour, this could easily change something already, maybe from your experiences?
I think, in terms of prevention work, we're not there, are we? I think probably about 80-90% of the stuff that I end up getting involved with is the 10 a.m. WhatsApp message from production coordinator or tour manager saying we've got an issue. I think you can, when artists are kind of got to that past mid-level touring and their agents, their bookers know about how they naturally flow as a band and how far to push them within reason. That's already, you get a sense of what you can achieve. But I honestly don't think the costs of travel, the cost of energy, the ability to get a slot in a venue, the ability to sell tickets, I think that outweighs any human factors planning, I'll be honest. So I see all my works kind of dealing with the lack of luck in the logistics. Because I had a tour that went around the UK. They sold 30 dates, they added another 15, so they did 2 laps of the UK. They hit the same towns twice, in an 8-week period. So from a logistics point of view, it doesn't make sense, but it's availability and market pressures.
One trick is with the very long work days that we work as a team, that we make sure that someone can cover your gig for an hour or two so that you can pull back and get some rest if needed. And one lesson I learned from COVID, before we never thought about it, we had, with a big cruise, a bus per team, so 1 bus for video, 1 bus or 2 for lights, 1 for sound, pyro and so on, and 1 for the core production crew and catering. And that's something that makes a lot of sense to switch that up, because now if it's COVID or if it's just a regular flu or something, the whole team gets sick at the same time. So then you cannot do a show if the whole team is sick. So it's best to mix up the buses with the different divisions.
So there something has changed already and you work around it.
Well, that's something that we just before pre-COVID, we never thought about it. And we saw it in the first touring summer of 22. We learned that lesson in the hard way.
I think there are tour managers out there that are really thinking proactively about it and sort of gamifying the tour a bit and having, healthy eat spots that will go on the WhatsApp group. There'll be some people will go for a run, or people will bring bikes on tour and stuff, just to engage and connect with the local area for whatever hours that you do have, so that you're not sort of, that's, the dead space time is where the addictions, where the bad eating, and all that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, people bring their bikes on tours, they travel on the bus, on the truck, so if you have an hour, half an hour, you can just cycle around. With the bands, there's more and more bands that, as a tour manager, we pick the hotels with a good gym that actually take their workout time.
So this also always sounds like it is an investment in health, right? Like money-wise, it is really something that you spend, and probably Jochen being an on-call doctor, like the events that you attended and that you work on call for, it's all big events. It's not smaller club tours.
No, it's. I'm often called for very small tours, just in a small venue with 200, 300 people in the audience.
Okay.
If they have vocal cord problems, for example, they call me because they need help then. So it's not only the very big ones, but it's also the very big ones. And the very big ones, you're usually called in advance, that you're on call on this day, or that you're at the venue at this day. With the very small productions, they usually don't have the money to afford to call you in advance and pay you for that, so they hope you are available when they call in the afternoon, that you're available to come at the night. But you asked for the small thing with a big impact, that's to have rest for a few minutes. That's why when I go there, I always try to get a room for me in some quiet space. And then when the patients come, the crew members come, they have to turn off their radio and have to leave their phones outside. So then at least the 5 minutes rest when they are in my room are a big impact on the rest. It doesn't even matter what I really do as a treatment sometimes. The rest is part of the treatment. To be there and nobody can call you and nobody can get you on the radio. And that's when I see in my experience how important this would be just to implement, to say, you now have for a tour manager, for example, say, you rigger or stage manager, did you have your rest now? You need 5 minutes rest.
They only work 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. They have the most rest out of all of them.
That rings a bell. I mean, we got booked to cover a stadium-level touring band, their crew. So we provided physiotherapy sessions at their sort of tour dates. And, all the crew signed up. So we did it over 3 years of their tour. And it's something like 103 different crew members over those 3 years that we've looked after individually. And it was almost 270 appointments that we did. But the one person that didn't come was the actual tour manager. And whenever I saw them, they're behind the desk. The show's going on and they're still on it. And then, we'd packed up on one of the nights. So around 8, usually we run it from midday to 8 o'clock. And then we go away. And then sometimes they use our space for makeup or whatever. Then I got a call, can you come back? So it was literally, we were loading our van back about 9 o'clock, and the tour manager's sick, could you go and see them? And this is the one person, that the kind of center point of all air traffic control is through that person. And they were doing a great thing for their crew, but again, it comes down to making that boundary for yourself. Where's that time? Where's that 5 minutes to have a break, to have more bandwidth?
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
wanted
mission
to
control,
share
they
like
just-
a story that Julia, not a story, like when we had a talk in preparation, I asked Julia about her day and that she is there, like the first person who is at the venue and probably the last person who leaves. And I asked her when there is free time, and she said, when the artist is on stage, then I have time to answer my emails. This is when I relax. So this is still work. This is not taking a break. So I wanted to know, like, you've been doing this for so many years. You took a little breaks. How did you change your rhythm within your career, and did you, implement something, especially like in the last years during during COVID? There was a rise of more awareness about mindfulness. Did you work out to implement something of it, or is this just like
You
an
can lie, it's
ideal
okay.
world?
Well, I took a break from touring because I had 2 kids and I'm a single mother, so I couldn't go on tour that much anymore. The changes during COVID, there were many aspects, and for a year, even all the promoters were suddenly friendly and working together through it, and there was like the spirit, we're going to keep doing this, like we're going to work as a team even afterwards, and as soon as it was done, everybody went in their own ways, backstabbing each other and stuff, so nothing really changed because we went straight into the craziness again, and the first summer it was really hard because people weren't used to running like night and day anymore.
And I feel dates were compressed into a smaller space of time because of all those costs that have gone up post-COVID too.
Yeah, so no, it hasn't really changed because the job's still the same. In Germany, you now have the kind of like the union situation that you've had in the States for many years, that the local crew can only work certain hours, which helps them partly, but it's really difficult for us at times because the other half is now untrained people, so that in itself is a danger for us if people don't know how to lift cases and accidents happen like that. And I don't know. There's always teams that have been more mindful than others. So I've always been, since I was the head of booking as well, I could always pick which bands I would work with, and I've always also made it a point to work with the more difficult ones, but you learn the most out of those tours. But I had one artist that I taught, that I did the German legs of their tours for 25 years, who was infamous for drug and alcohol abuse. And I always knew when he was sober, it was when they needed a room for a gym. They had their own gym equipment and built a gym every day for him. So that's you learn to read the signs.
Yeah, you touched a big topic there, the abuse of alcohol and other substances, which is like part of the rock and roll lifestyle that we always hear about. So how often do you two as doctors have to deal with that side of things?
Very, very rarely, actually. I think that's nowadays it's more a myth than a reality, I guess, because I worked in this part of medical field after studying medicine. I was a street worker at a drug hotspot and had a small office together with other doctors for substitution of drugs for drug-addicted people. So usually I know it when I see it, but it's really rare that I see it. I always ask because there are interactions with medication I give, so I ask them in doctor's confidentiality that I tell them that I cannot talk to anybody about it, and they can tell me and that we need it. And of course, sometimes I get the answer, I take this, I take that, but it's much less than you probably think. It's more common with young, upcoming artists and in the crew as it is with the artists that are on stage for 20, 30 years now. Some of them take their tea after the show and want to go to the hotel with no groupies, with nobody, just in the limousine and back to the hotel because I have a show tomorrow and I'm over 60 years now and I cannot do that anymore. And so it's no big issue, actually. I don't know, what is it in your experience?
For me, there's a bit of a bias as to who I end up seeing. So if there's a bit of an environment where there's an enabling environment of a performer who can just about perform and has an addiction and their need for the drug of choice is fulfilled, then often it's contained and it doesn't, if it's an overdose, the acute on-site event medical people will deal with it. It's very rare to get an artist agent to come to us and say, okay, we think that they need some support for mental health. It only happens if that agent, band manager, has worked with us before on a different context, and then they feel confident to reach out. But otherwise, it can be a bit of a taboo, or things get enabled. But I think there's quite a lot going on in terms of sober touring at the moment. So if you've not heard of Roadies in Recovery, they run 3 or 4 virtual meetings like NA and AA online for people that are in touring. So there's a kind of peer support thing going on. And I think there are some bands that specify they want to do the tour sober. So they'll have a sober rider in terms of, they won't have gallons and gallons of whiskey, because it comes down to who's funding it. So there's a lot more kind of mid-level or theatre, large theatre kind of capacity bands that I've worked with, that they are now managing the budget as well. So they're kind of big enough to book it themselves. And then they look at the rider that they had in their mid-20s, and now they're coming to their, late 30s, and they're looking like, why are we spending on this every night? So I think COVID had a part in that. There's a lot more focus on health and well-being, and I think touring, it's starting to filter through, I think. There are more and more sort of people.
Julia, what is your experience with this side of things? Because you are the one who's constantly there and can monitor it or can see that there is substance abuse, there is alcoholism going on, and are probably much more closer than a on-call medic.
Lots of stories and a lot of sad stories as well. I did with both Chris Cornell and Scott Whelan the first shows when they came out of rehab, which was really difficult, and helping them with a separate room and monitoring what was brought into the backstage and stuff like that. I had one very close friend that was always struggling with addictions. In one tour, his father and I took turns 24/7 to keep him off drugs and stuff, and all of those died. And the last one, my friend, at the age of 38. I think it's less coke and stuff like that. That used to be more like early 2000s and stuff. Nowadays, it's more the pills, the opioids, and it's especially difficult with American artists because it's so much easier to access over there, and they usually, if they want it, they will find it. And they usually have one assistant on tour, like a person that will go out of their way to find it. And it's, we're not providing anything. And I've always, since I could choose the bands, I could always make sure that I've never toured with junkies. I would, because it's just dangerous for you. One story of a bus driver who was driving Pete Doherty that was afraid to sit down in his own bus because he was afraid of needles being somewhere in the cushions. So and my mom used to run a pharmacy, and when the bands found out that I had a key to that pharmacy, they put a lot of pressure on me to get stuff, and I handed her the key back. So
yeah, I mean, I do get requests for sort of prescriptions for ADHD medications. So, go pills. So you can do that, load in and de-rig, and then go to the next. Because also it's a freelancer's economy. So they might jump from one job here, and then the next day they're somewhere else, and then they've got 2 weeks of that, and then they don't have an off day because they're jumping on another tour. So we have a kind of flat policy that we because in the UK there are controlled drugs. We don't do controlled drugs, so we won't prescribe them. And for something like that, I actually de-prescribed someone off them because they had seen a private psychiatrist. This is for an artist. They'd seen a private psychiatrist 2 weeks before starting a long tour. They'd gone out there, so they were fine at home. ADHD was getting better, focus is great. And they really needed the ADHD meds in the home environment because this is where the life of admin and sticking, doing your tax returns and, picking your kids up on time. But in the touring environment, they actually probably didn't need the ADHD meds because they always had a call time. There's always someone managing them every step of the way. But they ended up having panic attacks, and so they got in touch with me for that, and I was like, okay, so what's going on? What meds are you on? Are you doing anything? And it's like, oh, well, there's one thing that's changed, and it's like, okay, so it's your dose of dexamphetamine that's changed, and you've never been on that. You've never had a 2 or 3 month period at home in your natural environment, and now you want to throw it into the fire of tour. So yeah, that's one specific sort of scenario. But often it's requests for it, like, could you sort out this? Could you? And it's like, so no, we don't do that. And I think I started the company back in 2021, so just after pandemic. And it's one of these things you start to learn with time, the types of requests. And they might have had a long-standing history of ADHD meds, in which case probably go to your usual psychiatrist, your usual family doctor, get it that way, rather than just seeing a random for the first time. And I think that's the concept of RoadieMedic, is that we want to give continuity of care to creatives. So before it was, an artist is ill in Berlin, they get the local hotel doctor who doesn't understand a performing artist. They understand VIP, they understand, private healthcare, and they upscale them treatments that they probably don't need. And then they go to the next town, they're in Munich, and then they see Jochen, so they get perfect, gold standard care. But when they come to London, they get a different experience. And so there's a real risk of polypharmacy, so different meds for different perceptions of what the problem is, lack of consistency. So with us, it's, it's a single point of access. We hand off to other doctors in other parts of Europe. So in Denmark, we've got a team. In the UK, we have, and for Ireland as well. Hopefully, I can hand over to Jochen coming forward. And I think that's the thing. It's not a sticking plaster, but it's a bit of continuity and understanding of who this artist is, what their context is.
So that is definitely a goal, I think. Jochen, how often do you run into conflicts like these where you are asked to do something or to prescribe something, or where you give an advice that is not followed afterwards? How do you interact with these challenging moments where there are conflicts of interest?
It's only with what you called VIP people, sometimes artists, or mostly artists, who had a treatment in the US or in the UK or somewhere, and the treatment is not proven, and the treatment is very dangerous for their health, and usually doesn't help them, makes things only worse.
At best, it might be a placebo.
Yeah, and then I don't do it. There was an artist, for example, who wants glutathione, what is a substance that is in your body already, and you also can take it into your body with just eating special fruit or food supplements, and he wanted it as an injection. And there's not even the medication available in Germany. I should have ordered it in the UK or in the Netherlands, where they have the medication. And I told them in advance that I wouldn't do it, but I have alternatives what we can do that would work better. And the artist understood, but his management wanted me to give the injection, and I just said, I don't do that. And that usually happens, but I think you have to stand for what you believe in and what your professional status tells you that is right and that is wrong. And I can always tell them why this is wrong. And usually most of them then say, okay, then try your alternative. And some of them, I just had one artist who wanted something special, and I said, we do the alternative, and he tried it. And 2 weeks later, he sent me an email that he's only doing the alternative now that I offered him, because it's much better than what he had before. And that is how I try to do it. But I really, if someone, I was already asked if I could if I can prescribe something that is working like cocaine, for example, and I say, no, I cannot prescribe it, and then it's okay. Usually you just have to stand on what you are and what you do, and then if you can tell the patient why you do it the way you do it, they usually believe in you. And what never happened is that they do, until now, of course that can change. So your second question, that they don't do what I advise them to do. Actually, they are on such a high pressure, crew and artists, to have to function the next day or tonight, or to have to perform the next day. They are taking every straw you give them and say, when you do this, this would be better, then they try it. It never happened that they don't believe you.
It's interesting. I often get, again, WhatsApp message saying, one true story, it was asked, we've got someone with back pain, the drummer's got back pain, they want Oromorph, they want liquid morphine, and they want an injection in their back, because that's what they usually get when this happens. And it was kind of like, okay, so there's a request, but I think behind it you have to start to ask questions and find out and understand where they're coming from. So it's rather than, okay, let me hear you out. What's brought you to this point? So for this individual artist, they ended up with a drummer. It was an L5-S1 disc prolapse. So if you've ever had that, it's basically when a disc between your spinal cord pushes out and hits one of the nerves. So that basically affected his drumming. So on his right side, so he couldn't hit the one of the pedals. He was teaching me, because so I always kind of, like an idiot, thought that to drum, it's kind of with your heel. But he's like, oh, no, I'm on the ball of my foot and kicking the drum pedal like that. So he basically has a neurological deficit because of this disc prolapse. And so I think it's just trying to do right by the individual, do right by the person. And I think that's where we're useful, is that we've got the expertise to unpick, and where we don't just do this kind of blind, blinkered thinking and, oh, they always want this Oromorph, so we'll just give them the drug of choice for addiction. But actually, what's underlying that, and do right ethically by the patient, and then find out, how you can optimize their situation. So for that guy, he ended up having 2 weeks off tour, tons of painkillers to control it. He had an MRI within sort of 24 hours. He got a diagnosis of what this is and why it's limiting. Got a spinal surgical opinion, that was the other thing. It's like, oh, can you not just get him to a spinal surgeon and do an epidural? Just give him an anesthetic in the back, and then he'll just hobble around on stage, every other night. And so it was actually talking them through. It's actually, we can't do this. The natural history of a disc prolapse, it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to recover. No spinal surgeon will do this type of procedure unless you've had lots of physio for about a month, 4 to 6 weeks. And so it's kind of just informing people, and that's where we come in, is to kind of communicate and hopefully address the concerns and just show the lay of the land, but then also provide the solutions. So we got him back to tour. So initially it was graded return. So for their 35 dates they did, he wanted to join the tour bus for the first 2 weeks, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But for them it was their go away, their sort of farewell tour. He wanted to be part of the action some way. So we said, look, you stay in a hotel, get some physio. We organised that, intense sort of every other day physio, and marginal gains started to improve. Pain meds came down, and then when you got to week 2, after week 2, started to do just the encore. And then a week of doing that, then graduated to a third of a set. And there's this interesting ebb and flow. So he would tell me, oh yeah, I'm just doing a third of a set, and then you find out, on the socials, oh, he's done a lot more than that and smashed it out of the park. And you have this kind of, ebb and flow, and it's not kind of us against them. It's like I want them to be successful, but to also be well.
Julia, I think this portrays like also that there is, first of all, a lot of like pressure from outside on artists to perform, but also like an internal pressure. They want to be on stage. There is like every creative person knows this. You don't choose this profession just because it's cool. You have an intrinsic need to go on stage and you want to do this. How often do you feel like you have to talk to your artists in that way that they also see their limits and boundaries themselves first of all?
Well, not all of them have the pressure to actually perform. There's artists who, Adele, the first couple of tours, she hated performing. That's why she did so few shows throughout her career. That's two very different groups of artists. There's the ones that have something that drives them onto the stage, and there's others that are like true. Their soul is an artist, but it's like a creative output, but not necessarily have the drive to go on stage. And it's actually harder for them oftentimes because it takes it takes a lot to actually go on stage. Axl Rose is a perfect example because back in the day, you heard all those stories about how the band had to beat him up to go on stage, how he was always 2 hours late, and that was stage fright and nobody was aware of it, that he just had a huge issue going on stage. So I think that really needs monitoring, and that needs help. And so in an ideal world, we need, if it's not a touring doctor, we need someone on tour, like an awareness person that monitors bands and crews about their well-being, physical and mental.
Yeah, this is a perfect example for just like mental issues that we have touched like every now and then here, but I think this is one of the biggest issues. Think like when we talked earlier, there was also the mention of loneliness. Though you are on tour with your band or as a single artist, not even with a band, but also like with tons of people, you still are not in your normal social environment. And we all heard like in the last years the rise of like loneliness as a medical factor. How does this influence a tour and the health on tour and also the mind?
It's a big part, yeah. It's a big part. Even on small tours, it can be an issue, but especially on the big world tours when the crew members, the artists are not the big issue because the artists fly home when they have 2 days off on the big world tours, the main artists. But the crew members stay abroad and they are away from their families for 3 months, for 4 months in a row. And they are lonely, they are away, they are in a different environment. They often even don't know the city they are in. Oh, are we in Munich today? They sometimes tell me. And when I ask them, where are you tomorrow? They don't know what the next city is because it's just on tour and you get back in your tour bus. And they are lonely, and in the loneliness, everything what your body, the high-stressed body gives you as pain gets worse because the comfort of your environment is gone. And if you don't have the comfort, the pain is getting higher. So they don't come with their mental issues. They come with their back pain or their pain in the foot or their headaches. And then you talk about the mental issues. And my part always is to be, not friend is too much, but to be like a partner in solving the problem. So I always try that the production is okay, but that the patient on the first side has a chance to get better. Because the impact on the production, if the patient, the crew member cannot work for the rest of the tour or cannot work for 2 weeks next week, is much higher than when we now say, okay, we now need a treatment, we now need a day off or a few hours off, and that can work. I just had a production a few weeks ago. They had 2 stage managers because they had over 40 trucks and they had a mega load in and a very big load out, and so they had 1 stage manager just for load in and load out and 1 stage manager for being there during the show and during the venue days. And so, but they could both do the other part too. And 1 stage manager went ill, and so I decided with all of them that he stays in the hotel for the next 48 hours and doesn't go to the venue at all. And the other stage manager will do it all, and then they will change. And they were all happy, and he was really getting well in the 48 hours. And he came back after 36 hours and said, now I want to work again, and now I am full of power. And that's what bringing solutions, that's what you say. We always try to bring solutions, even if in the mental health issues. And there's always, especially in the mental health issues and in the loneliness, there's always a solution you can find.
Have you seen or witnessed a change regarding that? Because during the last years, like a lot of artists got much more vocal about the mental strains that a tour can pull, and it's much more out in the open and talked about. But did this like open talk actually change already something? Julia, maybe you can share something from your experience?
I think one thing that changed with COVID was to stop what we're doing, because we were used to just running, and I know a lot of people that are on tour 11 months out of the year and they don't function at home. They don't know how to live in an apartment, in a house, to deal with their invoices, all of that. They're incapable of doing so, whether it's artists or crew members. And since we all had to stop, we had to reflect what we're actually doing, and I think that helped individuals to actually look at their life and how unhealthy it is. So I think it's still up to the individual person how to change habits and stuff, but that definitely helped. So there was a good side of COVID.
Yeah, but at the same time, like in the last years, ever since COVID, I feel like a lot of things in the industry has changed, and the financial pressure, especially on smaller artists, it's much more bigger. Do you witness that as well? Can you explain something about that?
Yeah, well, I think it is that pressure for the club band to perform whatever, and they're going to make something maybe on merch, if anything. And most small tours will lose money. They're lucky if they break even. And so the kind of mental health concerns there is where the finances are poor, and their partners or family members are challenging them on how long are you going to keep doing this to us. So that friction and the home place, why are you doing this? So, and that becomes a kind of like, well, I'm a creative person, I'm an artist, and that kind of tying your self-worth to your metrics on social media, it's so difficult for artists.
To maybe end on a positive note,
bad.
let's have a look in the future. What is something that you wish for, and where you maybe also already work on implementing change and be part of it? Maybe this is like the last question that you can just give into the round, and each of you can answer it like one by one.
I think I already answered it with my last input of having a person on the road designated to well-being, like looking after artists and crew, making sure they're doing okay.
Yeah.
I think we need to look more at that.
So I'll sort of borrow from that, and I guess, is to have someone offline, online even. So, so with some of the agents that I've worked with, we get to know the artists before they're even in the campaign phase because they've got a previous history of mental health issues. You get to know them, then they go and do their touring, campaign, whatever. And if there's any fallout in between, then you can be proactive. So I think it's just with culture change as part of representing an artist and promoting them is to think what are the physical and mental health things that you can do before they get out to the pressure cooker of touring.
Jochen, do you have another thing to add that you wish for the future for it to change?
I would like to be, I would like to be involved when the production is planned already in the planning process. I think that would spare a lot of problems later on. And me personally, I think that would be a good invested money to involve some professional, doesn't have to be me, but some professional medical advisor in the production planning, at least of bigger tours, but also on small club tours, as you said, to know the artist, to know the patient, but in the planning also for the crew of bigger tours where you have, as we had it once, 160 crew people traveling with the artist and the dancers. And with 160 people planning also for health issues, I think would be a good investment.
Great, thank you very much. We now have like a few minutes left for questions from the audience. There will be a mic, but you could also, well, maybe not scream because this is like a very hard situation. But if you have any questions, you can ask any of the panelists.
We answered them all already.
Sorry?
I said we answered them all already.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Okay.
We're around all day, aren't we? So if anyone wants to have an informal chat,
There is a question over there. Yes. Thank
always
you
catch us
for
afterwards as well.
participating.
Hello, my name is Mark, and I'm a volunteer paramedic myself. So I kind of like know and see how this kind of like pain situation is going on, and then you treat. And I love that you all shared today that it's more about like the health and prevention, and a lot of things are happening in here. Resting was like a very big topic in here. Do you see anything that is currently happening in the touring world or also in the festival world that is already going towards that health, rest, and not only medical support down the road? Do you see anything happening?
There's actually some festivals that have a setup not only for the audience but also for the artists. Yeah, definitely.
So this could be like advice, especially for festivals of you. How did it change if you went to a festival that had such rooms to just like calm down?
Of either festivals to calm down or having an on-site physiotherapist, stuff like that. So that has changed. So
we've done that. Roskilde, we did maybe 2023. We did a small pilot of having a physio on site and a doctor there for emerging artists and production crew. And because with festivals, you've got the economies of scale. You just employ 2 people for 8 hours each. But you can put through, 20, 30 people through that time frame. And it's kind of just, sometimes it's useful just to know that you've got that. But then people will, they'll go and work one festival, move to the other. So I think we've done it for South by Southwest in Texas, the British Music Embassy, which is like our British export stage. We did that for the emerging artists there. So again, it was like 40 vans over 3 days out in Texas. And we paired with an American company that does a similar thing. And again, it's the same for crew. And so I think we've done a few little pilots. We did one in Wales with their Showcase Festival. Same in Scotland at Wide Days Festival. Wide Days, Focus Wales, Roskilde, South by, British Music Embassy. Those are the kind of 4 pilots of that. And I'd love it if there's a festival out there that wants to book us.
Great.
Yeah, on one tour I was asked before for recommendation, and we put table tennis on the whole tour. So they had the table tennis with them, 4 tables, and the crew was playing before every show. And what's very interesting is what also social interactions change when you play table tennis, and we really, when they were in Munich, we put it up till doors. So they didn't want to stop, and we had to postpone the opening for the audience for 5 minutes because there was no winner found yet. And so we postponed the opening for 5 minutes, and the local production wasn't very happy about that, but the tour said we postpone it, and then they had a winner, and then he was the winner for the night, and everything was fine. And that makes a lot in the mental health way if you have these interactions.
I think that's what I was talking about, gamifying the tour. There's some tour managers that will have these little games, you know, people go out for a run, they go out for a cycle, and something that, so you're not just constantly at the coal face in the workplace, just mining away, slogging away, that there's actually something fun, and so that stops the isolation and loneliness stuff. There's also people sometimes give a slot in the day for calls to home as well, so they call it family time on some tours, and so you get a Zoom call. It forces you to go and take, if there is time in the schedule.
So little tweaks can already do so much. Thank you all that you shared your experiences, your expertise. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your participation, and don't hesitate to ask each and every one of us when you run into us if there is something that you want to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.